Hey everyone, it's Blue Lizard Jello here, and I know I've been gone a while. And one of the reasons that I've been gone a while is because currently, as you know, I'm in a playthrough of Lords of the Fallen. And I've been trying to go through and play the game blindly so I can offer you guys my fresh insights as well as my original reactions as I'm playing the game. The reason that I haven't posted a video in over a week now is twofold. Number one, this episode that I'm currently recording for right now, I lost the original commentary for, and that's completely my fault. I decided not to save the Audacity file, and thus I lost all of that audio. The other one is, I'm having a hard time loving this game, and here's one reason why right here. So this mark on the wall, I know that I'm supposed to be finding these signs in order to gain a passageway into, I believe, the cathedral, or I'm looking for a cathedral passageway. Anyway, it's been a little while. I just identified this sign on the wall that I believe to be one of those signs, but I don't get any indication that I did. In fact, all it did was light up, and that's it. Now, I don't want necessarily something to pop up on the screen indicating you have found one of 3 messages or hidden signs, something like that, because that does kind of break the immersion, but some sort of audio or visual cue indicating that yes, this is what I was looking for would be helpful. And I think that's just one of the game designs that I haven't fallen in love with, in that this game seems to take a page out of a lot of games recently where you don't have your hand held by the developers. In other words, it does take some exploration, it does take some foresight and some insight in order to figure out where to go next, what item you need to be looking for, etc. However, this game, to me, doesn't seem to be directing the player towards the objective all the time. And we're going to see that in a couple of later episodes that I've already recorded where I'm just not sure where to go next. And unlike a game, and again, I don't want to keep comparing it to Dark Souls, but unlike a Dark Souls game, you do feel some compelling towards the quote-unquote right way. Or at the very least, there are some NPCs that can give you some somewhat cryptic dialogue that'll actually direct you in the right direction. I don't get the same sense of direction in this game. It feels kind of directionless. But now I want to take a look at the menu here because I did just find the Lethal Secret Short Sword, which is actually a pretty cool weapon. And I want to talk about the menu. So there's a lot of information on here, and I like the fact that they tried to go with more of a graphical approach so you can actually see the weapon, or at least a concept art of the weapon prior to using it. But there's just so much available on the screen at any given time. Instead, what I would like to see is something a little bit more toned down and just focus on the item itself. So if I'm going to learn about the Lethal Secret, don't show me the menu on the left, don't show me my overall stats, show me the weapon itself and tell me what it will do for me. Kind of a minor gripe because more information usually isn't a bad thing, but in this case it's kind of distracting. Now down here, I don't know if you would call this a mini-boss, but this spider, I really actually enjoyed this fight, minus one thing that you're going to see here a couple times, and that is the idea of poise, or the lack of poise, in this game. There are enemies in this game, such as the little spiders that this mini-boss is going to spit out, that can knock me out of an attack or knock me out of healing, and it just doesn't seem like an enemy of their stature would have the power to do so. But I'm going to let you just sit back and watch and kind of get an idea for what I mean. Now, when the large spider pounces me and I'm stunned, I can understand that. But when the little spider pounces me and I'm temporarily stunned, it seems to not exactly equate to the size and strength of that little spider. Maybe I'm underestimating it, I don't know. Now, another thing that I'm going to somewhat complain about, and guys, when I'm offering these complaints and critiques, I am going to talk about some things that I really love about this game, because I don't hate it. But one of the things is the collision. So for me, if I'm going to hit one of these pillars, I'm going to be stopped immediately. But this spider, as you saw just a moment ago, when he pounces at me, if there's a pillar in the way, he is actually going to not collide with the pillar, but he is going to kind of glide around it and continue the attack. I find fault in that. I think collision should be the same for players and for enemies, or else that you run into this kind of muddied effect where enemies can hit you where you can't hit them. Now this is something that I thought was a huge pro. I like the fact that this game rewards the observant. What I mean by that is I saw an enemy laying in ambush on the ground, and I was able to attack him as he was still down. I think that's great. Too many games have invincibility frames when an enemy is on the ground, and I don't like that. Dark Souls is a prime example. If an enemy's on the ground, why can't I kill it? Now here's another thing that I really like. I think this is a very neat experience. I think that this is a very neat way of getting experience, and that's the fact that the more you risk, the greater your possible reward. And what I mean by that is, as you can see when I kill this enemy in just a moment, every time you kill an enemy in succession, your multiplier goes up, so you get more experience. Now, we've already talked about this briefly, but you can bank that experience at a checkpoint, which will reset your bonus counter, or you can just keep pushing forward and increase that bonus multiplier. If you die, you will lose that multiplier, and your experience will drop in the form of that cloud that I just picked up, and that cloud will actually dissipate the longer that cloud sits out there. I think that's a really neat mechanic, and I give them absolute props for that. One of the issues that I ran into, and you saw just a moment ago, is I don't know if this is a bug or a feature, but when an enemy is knocked to the ground, if you don't finish them right away, they restore their health, and it appears that it restores to almost full, if not completely full. Is that a bug? If so, it really needs to be fixed. If it's a feature, I actually don't hate it, although I do hate the fact that it's full to almost full, but if it's a feature, it kind of makes sense if you think about it. When you knock down an enemy, you should finish the job, because if not, they do have a chance to regain their strength and to kind of counteract. But I don't think they should get all their health back. So here's a boss encounter with the commander. I think it's a really, really cool looking boss. Yes, it is humanoid, and I have a feeling most of the bosses are going to be humanoid in this, and that's okay. That's not necessarily a criticism, just more of an observation from someone who's seen 2 of the bosses so far. And for the most part, I liked this boss battle. I do have a few minor complaints, but nothing major. Some of the hitboxes do seem a little wonky when I'm dodging, but that seems to be, unfortunately, a running thing in this game. But it's also a fight that seems fairly easy to learn. Once you've seen some of his attacks, you can actually start to read them pretty well. Not to the point where the fight is necessarily a breeze to get through, but you're going to see that in my first attempt, which, spoiler alert, I do die at the end, I was able to actually get him down to about half health, maybe even a little bit less. Now here's something that's going to be very divisive in this game, and that's the fact that there are different phases in the boss attacks. It's nothing new. We've seen this mechanic in many games, especially if you are accustomed to playing any sort of MMO games or co-op games. You'll often have these sort of phases. But I just hope, and I could be very wrong here, I hope that we don't see too many phases with the bosses that simply add in add-ons. Yes, that makes sense. In other words, what I mean is, I don't want to get 25% of the boss's health down and then have to fight 2 enemies, rinse and repeat until the boss is down. I don't mind when bosses get into a rage or a berserk form, or if maybe their attack patterns change. We've seen that in many games. I just don't want to have a rinse and repeat style fight, especially when some of these bosses, again speaking from the 2 that I fought, do seem to have a lot of health, and they're kind of damage sponges. So if the boss fight is going to be dragged out, give me more of a reason to drag it out other than I need to kill these 2 and then go back to the boss. Now talking about some of the pros, some of the other things I really like about this game, I think visually, I think it's beautiful. Now, I think they could have done a better job at optimizing for the PC. I have a fairly decent PC, but I can't run it at max settings without dropping to below 30 frames, which, yes, kind of a first world type problem, I understand that, but I've seen the PS4 edition, and it actually looks pretty good and runs at a very stable FPS. I was getting some frame drops when I was playing at too high of settings, even though my computer theoretically should be able to handle it. So some optimization issues aside, the game looks great, it's fairly smooth. The camera leaves a lot to be desired, and I know you guys have already seen that in this video and in the other 2. When you are in a tight corridor and you are playing a third-party game and the camera is set behind you or over your shoulder, the camera can make or break that experience. And in this case, sadly, it does break the experience sometimes. You will get pop in and pop out. It will go through your character. You won't be able to see what's in front of you. The camera can do some... I think the combat itself is actually very good. I think it's one of the game's strengths. It is a little bit slower than Dark Souls, and at first that bothered me. It felt slow and clunky. I've heard it described as clunky Souls. But, you know what, the more I thought about it, the more I realized sometimes the mechanics, the fighting mechanics in other games are actually too fast. When you're wearing this armor, you're carrying all this equipment, you know what, if you want a sense of somewhat realism in this fantasy world, then you know what, the attacks would be a little bit more slower and they would be more deliberate. And I do like the fact that you have to actually think about your next attack very well. You can't just mash the R1 or the L1 and get the kill. And I like the fact that you can chain your attacks to do more damage and you don't simply press one button. Other games, Dark Souls 2, you hit the L1 button and you're in power stance, you're going to do a combo. In this game, you can power stance or dual wield, and you actually have to go back and forth in order to chain the combo, and I think that's a great thing. But anyway, guys, this is just kind of my thoughts. The series will be continuing on a relatively daily basis with live commentary, unless I screw up the audio again. But otherwise, these are my initial thoughts on the game. Again, I don't hate it. I do have some critiques, but we'll continue investigating it together. If you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, gripes, or insults, let me know. Otherwise, I will see you in the next episode. And I'll be alive.